Welcome to the chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 168 of Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Shane Haff, and you can follow me on Twitter and YouTube at Shane Haff NFL. And I'm joined today by the best co-host in the game. You've heard him on the Tough Cover Radio Show. It is Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. _. Mark, we made it. It is game week. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I feel fantastic that we have NFL to talk about. We had college football last weekend. We've got it again this weekend. Obviously, for our Philly listeners, the Phillies heading towards the playoffs. The Eagles starting week one a couple days early this year. It is just an incredible time to be a sports fan, specifically an Eagles fan in Philadelphia.
Absolutely. And what we're going to do today, this is not what our normal shows will be, but we had 1 week left before we get to our normal recap shows. And we just decided we're ready to talk real football. We're going to do a preview show. So typically you will get this show from us on Mondays. We're going to recap the biggest events of the weekend with a special focus on the NFC East teams. This week, we're going to do a preview in much the same format. And so we will lead it off here with those NFC East games. Let's go first to the early game on Sunday. That is the Minnesota Vikings at the New York Giants. This isn't exactly riveting football, Mark. We've got Sam Darnold versus Daniel Jones. I think the main thing to watch from an Eagles perspective is how some of the new pieces for the Giants look. How does Malik Neighbors look? I mean, Malik Neighbors selected very highly. You and I both would have preferred Rome Odunze in that slot, but Neighbors was thought more highly of than Odunze pretty well across the league from the things we read. And you've also got Brian Burns making his debut for the Giants after they traded a second-round pick for him. They signed him to a 5-year, $141 million deal, which made him the second highest paid edge in the NFL. How's he going to look, opposite Kayvon Thibodeau? Can Evan Neal finally take the leap that the Giants fans have been waiting for? So I do think there's some interesting things to look at from the Giants' perspective. But ultimately, this game, it loses a lot of its appeal when the Vikings lose their quarterback. You trade up and you get JJ. Well, I guess they didn't really end up having to trade up much, but they position themselves to go get JJ McCarthy, and he's lost for the year before it starts, which is a major bummer for this game. What are you going to be watching for in Vikings Giants?
The thing I'll say is, and I'm pretty low on both these teams coming into the year here, but if the Giants passing offense can't look competent in this game, then it's going to be a massive problem all year long because the Vikings secondary has some severe problems. They've lost multiple guys due to injury. Obviously, Kyrie Jackson, a guy that they drafted, passed away tragically. That's something they were hoping to get a lot from him from a day 2 pick. They just signed Stephon Gilmore a couple days ago, but probably going to take a bit to get him into Brian Flores' scheme and kind of ingratiated into he probably is going to play right away, but I don't think he'll be at his best right away. I think they're going to have a pretty bad secondary. I would say the Colts, the Rams have some of the worst secondaries in football coming into the year on paper. So if the Giants offense can't look good from a passing standpoint, I think we're talking about a bottom 3, bottom 5 offense all year long.
Yeah, it'd also be interesting to see what Brian Flores has cooked up for year 2 as a DC. I mean, last year it was the 0 pressure or drop 8 into coverage. Like, he led the league in both metrics, which is just insane. But we saw that defense start to fall off near the end of the year. And a lot of that's due to lack of talent on the back end, and that's still a thing. But I wonder, he's kind of the mad scientist of the NFL, and he is to defense what Mike McDaniel is for offense in terms of just pushing the boundaries, cooking up new things. So I'll be interested to see what he rolls out after an offseason to retool and rescheme things.
Real quick, I wanna ask you while we're on this with Brian Flores. We didn't talk about the Tua Brian Flores kind of dust up, and I don't know if I saw you comment on it on Twitter. Did you have any thoughts on that?
I saw the dust up. I really didn't look into it too terribly much. I am not a big off-season drama thing. So I don't know. It's one of those things without knowing exactly what was said, what to make of. Obviously, clearly he didn't think Tua was the guy. Clearly there's some beef there with that. You can certainly understand why Tua loves Mike McDaniel so much after that experience, a guy who's come in and just like publicly supported him from day one, which, I mean, that's what you should do as your coach, right? You've got to, you're tied to the quarterback. We've seen throughout the NFL, if there's a coach and a quarterback and it doesn't work out, the coach is usually the first piece to move. And so you've got to make it work. Maybe there's some interpersonal skills there that were lacking from Flores, or maybe it's something that wasn't. I honestly really don't know. Be interesting to see these teams meet up again, though, down the road.
Yeah, I think we kind of talked about this when it was happening, where they kept yanking Tua out of games and putting Fitzpatrick in. And basically Tua said, when you have a coach telling you suck all the time, no matter how good you might be, you start to believe it. And we've had our fun with Tua and our debates about Tua over the years. He's a starting quarterback for sure in the NFL. And Brian Flores was benching him anytime that there was any sign of pressure, which has to really affect your willingness to make mistakes, which is something you have to be willing to do to make big plays happen. And we've obviously seen that. But then I do understand the other side. That's like, well, Brian Flores won like one less game over his last 2 years than McDaniel won over his first 2 years. So I do understand the people coming out kind of against what Tua is saying and maybe saying Tua feels they need to be coddled. I get all the sides of it. I do think at its core, I feel justified for talking how I did at the time with Tua getting benched and kind of being like the hocus pocus in and out with him and Fitzpatrick really affecting him. And I think it did. And clearly he's still kind of talking about it. So, yeah, I just thought it was an interesting kind of thing to bring up while we were on Flores.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who do you think wins this one? I guess we should do picks on every game. Why not?
I'll take the Giants. I mean, is Daniel Jones really worse than Sam Darnold? Like, I don't think so. So I'll take Daniel Jones's mobility. I'll take, I'll just take the Giants in this one. It's a home game for them. I think they come out, and I don't think they look great, but they'll get the win.
I'll take the Vikings, but I'm not confident in it at all. I'm just taking Justin Jefferson to get the job done.
Fair enough. All right, well, let's go Dallas at Cleveland, which is in the afternoon slate on Sunday. There's a lot of interesting things here to watch on the Cowboys side. The first one is, how's the defense going to look without Dan Quinn? I mean, regardless of what you think of Dan Quinn as a head coach, and I don't think that's a great role for him. I didn't love the Commanders going and making that hire. He's a phenomenal defensive coordinator. And you add on top of that, we always talk about defensive performance isn't sticky year over year, but the Cowboys have strung together a couple good years of defensive performance. They lose the guy in charge of that. They also lose Deron Bland, who broke out last year to a foot injury, and he's going to miss 6 to 8 weeks. And so there's some interesting things to watch on the defensive side of the ball. They bring Mike Zimmer back. They get Mike Zimmer out of retirement, and we'll see what he's able to cook up. He was, a good defensive coordinator years ago. Has the game passed him by? We'll see what he brings out. And then on the offensive side, how is the Cowboys offensive line going to hold up to Myles Garrett? You lose Tyron Smith. And so now you've got Tyler Guyton, who was a right tackle, learning to play that position, is now going to be your starting left tackle. And how is that going to play out? So I think there's some really interesting matchups to watch on both sides of the ball here. What are you expecting in this game?
This is one I go back and forth on a lot. And I kind of thought I'd end up betting on the Cowboys in this game with all the dysfunction going on in Cleveland and Watson kind of refusing to practice and issues with him and Stefanski. And I think naturally the defense will probably regress. Obviously, Chubb missing the first couple games. So I think there's a lot to like about Dallas probably winning this game, just more continuity than Cleveland has. But it's not like the vibes in Dallas are great either. And CeeDee Lamb just got back in practice, and I think he'll probably be fine, but they don't have the running game figured out at all in terms of what that's going to look like. They just went out and signed 2 veteran backs. So I don't know where to go in this game, to be quite honest. I lean towards Dallas probably getting the job done, and people walking up being like, oh, Dallas, really good team. They're back on track. They're going to be fine. All the offseason chatter was nothing. and then probably going on a little bit of a struggle. They do have a tough early season schedule in general, even if you include this game, Dallas. But I kind of lean towards them getting the job done here.
Yeah, I think I'll take Dallas. I think that Deshaun Watson stinks. And I think Eagles fans are really familiar with Jim Schwartz, and that Jim Schwartz has a great fastball, and nobody could hit that fastball last year until you got to the playoffs. And CJ Stroud learned how to hit the fastball, and he has no changeup. There's no off speed pitch. It's we're going to line up and do what we do, even if it plays right into your hands, and we think we can beat you. We're going to dictate to you what you can do. And I think Dak's too good to allow that to destroy him, even if the offensive line just remotely holds up. And there's ways you can protect a rookie left tackle, especially when you've got an all-pro guard playing next to him. So I'll take the Cowboys in this one. I think they win.
I would, if CeeDee Lamb has any play this season where he's not doubled, it is a massive mistake by the other team, because man, there's not a lot else on that offense that scares you for Dallas. But I think they probably get the job done in like a low scoring ish game.
Yeah. And Jim Schwartz is well known for, making adjustments to his offensive opponent. This is the game where CeeDee Lamb's just going to play in the slot and end up with a linebacker on him and cover one all game long.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's go to the other divisional opponent, the Washington Commanders. This is also Sunday afternoon at Tampa Bay. This is the Jaden Daniels show. No matter which way you slice it, if you're watching one other divisional opponent, this is the one, because this is the most important piece. Now, I wasn't the highest on Jaden Daniels. He was number 15 on my big board in the draft. He was number 6 on Mark's. But I do expect him to make Washington a lot more exciting on offense. We've talked about it on this show before. His scrambling ability gives you a certain floor, and his deep shot ability is going to be exciting to watch. When you can scramble and you can throw deep, you can eke out a serviceable offense. Now, on the flip side of the ball, you've got the Buccaneers, and Todd Bowles knows how to scheme up a defense. Now, he's the guy who put the blueprint out on Jalen Hurts in the playoffs in 2021. He's the guy, which, not that it was hard last year. I could have put out the blueprint to shut the Eagles down in the playoffs last year, but his defense got the job done against the Eagles in the playoffs last year. And so if anybody knows how to scheme against a quarterback that is either limited by scheme, in Hurts' case last year, or by his ability and comfortability in the league, as evidenced by Hurts in 2021, it is Todd Bowles. And so I expect Bowles to have a good plan for Jaden Daniels, but that's the matchup I'm really excited to watch on Sunday afternoon. Where are you looking in this game?
I think Jaden Daniels is gonna put on a show, and that's not even really coming at what I not even taking away what Tampa does defensively or what Bowles does or how good they could be this year defensively. I think these guys, when they come into the league with the rushing ability that Jaden Daniels has, you have a floor of how bad you can really look in a game. And I think the lack of film that's out there on what they're going to want to do offensively with him at the NFL level, I think it's only going to play into Washington's hands. I actually think Washington could get off to a little bit of a hot start this year. And I love Washington plus 3.5 in this game. I think Tampa's due for a big time regression. Dan Quinn, it's kind of similar on the other side of the ball. You can't really look at any tape from Washington last year. You kind of have to look at tape from what Dallas did last year. But Dan Quinn does kind of do different things based on the personnel that he has. It's kind of one of the good traits about him as a defensive coordinator. And obviously he's a fantastic defensive coordinator. So I do think he's going to be able to throw some looks at Tampa that maybe they're not expecting. And that's I'm just betting on unfamiliarity. A lot of the time in week 1, I like to bet on continuity. And I think I'm kind of going against some of my rules with week 1 betting by kind of fading Tampa, because they are the team of continuity in terms of at least Bowles. Obviously they lost their offensive coordinator, but a lot of the same pieces, and you have your head coach back and you have your quarterback. So you feel like a lot of continuity there, but I just think there's so much unknown with Tampa that's actually going to, or unknown with Washington, that's actually going to help them in this game. So I think Washington gets off to a hot start. And one of the stories of week 1, I think, is really going to be how good Jaden Daniels looked.
Yeah, I am with you. I would take Washington in this game. So if I am tallying correctly, that both of us picked all 3 of the divisional opponents to win week 1, right? Oh, no, you picked Minnesota.
Blues, but I wouldn't be shocked at all by that. I think that spread's 1.5. I think Minnesota's a 1.5 point favorite. I could have flipped that. There's a chance the Giants are 1.5 point favorite. But yeah, I mean, that one could absolutely go either way. You wouldn't catch me dead betting that game.
All right. Well, we will transition now to talking about the rest of the NFL slate. We'll just go in order here, starting with Thursday night football. These will be a little bit quicker. We won't go as in-depth on the other games, but here we go. Thursday night football, the kickoff game is a rematch of the AFC Championship game from last January. It is Baltimore at Kansas City. This is such a great kickoff game. I'm so excited to watch this. It was a great game in the playoffs. Play calling got the better of the Ravens offensively, I think, but I'm interested to see this out of the gate. The Xavier Worthy to Patrick Mahomes connection is going to be interesting. You had the line during the draft show that Xavier Worthy could wash out of the league or he could be a Hall of Famer depending on where he got drafted. And he got drafted on the Hall of Famer end of the spectrum there. There could not be a better landing place for him. And of course, Buffalo aiding that is something I'm sure we'll be talking about throughout the years, but that's not the match. That's not what I'm most excited to see. I'm most excited to watch Kyle Hamilton versus Travis Kelce. If you want to win this game, if you're Baltimore on defense, I'll take my chances with Xavier Worthy, with the rookie. You have got to contain Travis Kelce. And if there's any guy in the league that you can match up with Travis Kelce and say, he's yours all game long, it's Kyle Hamilton. And of course, you can have perfect coverage and still give up a touchdown. We saw that in the AFC title game last year. Like, there was a touchdown that Kelce caught over Hamilton that could not have been better coverage. It was absolutely perfect. And that's what Mahomes and Kelce bring to the table. But Hamilton at least has the ability to force them to be perfect in a week one game where maybe guys are rusty. So that's what I'm going to be keeping my eye on. Where are you going in this game? Who do you like?
Yeah, I lean towards Baltimore. I think Baltimore gets the job done. I think if you want Kansas City, you probably want them early. You probably want them while they're still figuring themselves out. Hollywood Brown hurt, obviously, so he was part of their kind of off-season plans, and he's going to miss this game. Rashee Rice probably playing, but kind of has had a pretty disastrous offseason. He's got like 7 charges that he's kind of worried about. He might get suspended at some point this year. So just feels like it's been a really kind of weird off season there. I think you look at what Baltimore did defensively to Kansas City in that AFC Championship game, and it seems like they did a great job in terms of their game plan for Kansas City's offense. And like you said, the one touchdown that Kelce had was really well covered also. But I think that the Baltimore offensive game plan will look a lot different than it did in that AFC Championship game. I think that Todd Monken's probably, lost sleep over that all off season. I think he's probably got a much better plan for this game. So I think the X factor will be Derrick Henry, and to see what Derrick Henry looks like in the Baltimore offense. That's kind of the thing I'm most excited to look for. I think that the biggest comparison that I can make to what Derrick Henry will look like, and I think it'll probably be a little bit more productive, although he had a great season. When Mark Ingram was running in Baltimore in 2019, he had 202 carries for 1,018 yards, rushed for 5 yards per carry, had 10 touchdowns. He was also a bit of a factor in the passing game. I guess he only had 20 catches, but he was. I think you look at that kind of production as what Derrick Henry will bring back to this offense. The last couple of years, they've had committees and so many injuries. Dobbins has went down so many times. Gus Edwards has had to step in and kind of do his boring 4 yards per carry thing. They had Keaton Mitchell for a little bit last year. They've had so many guys step in and out. I think that Derrick Henry is a real difference maker at that position for the first time since Mark Ingram was Mark Ingram.
Yeah. All right. I'm taking Baltimore in this one too. I'm like you. I mean, if this is January, I'm taking the Chiefs. In September, I'll take the Ravens. That just seems to be the way that it goes. So let's get into the Sunday slate now. Pittsburgh at Atlanta. It's just poetic, isn't it, that Arthur Smith's opening game as an offensive coordinator is in Atlanta, where he got fired last year. But the real story of this game for me is Kirk Cousins and the Falcons' offensive weapons against the Steelers' defense. The Steelers' defense is always good. It's going to be funny. And you know what I think of Russell Wilson, but it's going to be funny if Arthur Smith goes from Atlanta, where he got fired because he had a terrible offense, and his first game is as the OC of the Steelers, and their offense is terrible, while Atlanta's offense just like walks through this really good defense. Now, I don't expect that to happen. I think the Steelers defense is really good. TJ Watt, well, we know what you think of TJ Watt. I'm just like a half step behind you, in my opinion, of TJ Watt. I think he's an amazing player. And then they've got such a good secondary. You get Kirk Cousins coming off the Achilles injury. There's a lot of fascinating storylines in this game. How do you see it playing out?
I have no idea. This game, this game completely confuses me. I actually lean towards Pittsburgh, like maybe eking out a weird low-scoring win, and then the Falcons kind of tearing off some wins going forward. But hopefully not next week because they play Philly. But I think that there's a chance Pittsburgh slows this game down. And weirdly, Arthur Smith is one of the stories of the day. And it's like, oh, got his revenge. Kind of how like Hackett got his revenge against the Broncos, I think. So I could definitely see a similar kind of scenario there. But I have no idea. This game is so hard to know what to expect. Falcons are so new everywhere with Kirk, new offensive scheme, new defensive scheme, obviously new head coach with Morrison implementing that defensive scheme. It's so hard to know what they're going to look like. And Pittsburgh, hard to know what they're going to look like. They've had some preseason struggles. A lot of the offensive line wasn't playing. We don't know who their second receiver is. We just found out who their quarterback is. It could be an ugly offensive performance from Pittsburgh as well. So I think it'll probably just come down to who makes the plays late in the game here, which is, you could say that about anything, but I really think this game's going to be a toss up.
Yeah, the subtitle for this episode is "We have no idea." Like there's so many new things, and that's what's part of what's so exciting about week one. But if you ask me to pick this game now versus asking me to pick it yesterday or tomorrow, I might give you a different answer every time, because I'm with you. I truly have no idea. I'm going to slightly lean to Atlanta, and I'm mostly just doing it because they're at home. But this game I could see going either way.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, on to Arizona at Buffalo, which has an exciting new connection to watch on each side of the ball. You've got Kyler Murray to Marvin Harrison Jr. for the Cardinals, and then you've got Josh Allen to Keon Coleman for the Bills. I'm really excited to see both of these rookie receivers, see how they're going to fit into the offense. Obviously, have much higher expectations for Marvin Harrison Jr. than I do of Keon Coleman. It's also going to be interesting to keep an eye on the Cardinals' 3 high safety looks. That's something that we started to see from them a bit last year. We know that Josh Allen has a tendency to want to hunt explosive plays, to play hero ball. Is that going to be magnified now that Stephon Diggs is gone? If he's not connecting with Keon Coleman, we'll cue up the music for Jonathan Gannon to have the Cardinals in these 3 high safety looks that you just can't throw the ball downfield against. Will Josh Allen have the patience to check it down time and time and time and time again? If I remember correctly, 2 years ago, the opening game was a Buffalo game, and I was just gushing over Josh Allen running a West Coast offense, going on 12-play methodical drives, and saying, if he could just capture this, he's going to be unstoppable. And then last year we saw him open the season on Monday Night Football, where he single-handedly threw away a football game against the Jets backups. Which Josh Allen are we going to get? We could ask that question going into every game, but I'm especially fascinated in this particular matchup with the way the Cardinals play defense.
I think this is going to be a shootout. I think it's going to end up being an over game. The total set at 48. I would go over that. I think this is going to be kind of last ball wins. I think Arizona is better than people expect. I think Buffalo is worse than people expect. So Buffalo is a 6-point favorite here. I think Arizona keeps it closer than that. I wouldn't bet it either way, but I think Arizona keeps it closer than that. I think Buffalo wins, but I think Buffalo wins a close game that we're walking out of like, wow, that Arizona offense is going to be really fun. And maybe we overreact to the Buffalo offense a little bit. I know Gannon wants to keep everything in front of him. Obviously, it's the Fangio defense. We've seen it here, but I think Buffalo is going to be able to make big plays, whether that be with Josh Allen on the ground or whether that be in the running game with James Cook. I think Buffalo is going to make enough big plays while Josh Allen does enough working the ball down the field that it'll be a shootout that Buffalo wins a close one in. But I guess my interesting thing I'll watch is kind of how the Arizona passing offense breaks down, because obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. is the number one weapon in this offense, where they're even over James Conner, over Trey McBride, but obviously at the wide receiver position, I think Trey McBride's probably the number 2 target in the offense. And is Michael Wilson kind of a legitimate part of the offense, or is he just kind of out there as another guy? Maybe this is kind of a fantasy specific question, but I'm going to be really interested to see how much of a kind of a workload they give Marvin Harrison Jr. as the wide receiver 1 from day one, because I think he's ready for a full blown, top 10 receiver workload.
Yeah, I would take the Bills in this game. I would take the points if I was betting this game, but as a rule of thumb, I would never bet on a Bills game ever, because Josh Allen, I firmly believe Josh Allen can flip a switch and make you win by 20 or lose by 20 in any given game. And I would just never bet on a Bills game, period.
Yeah, it's not one I'm looking at betting other than the over.
All right, let's go to Chicago for the Tennessee Titans at the Chicago Bears. I tried. I really couldn't even come up with a point of interest on the Titans side of the coin. There's not much that interests me about the Titans this year. If you're a Titans fan, you can buy into the new coach, and can we, get enough out of Will Levis that he's our starter?
That's the whole year.
Yeah, that's the whole year. But for the Bears, it's how good can the Bears offense look out of the gate? You have Caleb Williams, Roma Dunze, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift. That's as good a group of weapons that is up there. Is Caleb Williams going to start fast? Are we going to be just, there's a contingent of people that love Caleb Williams. There's a contingent of people that absolutely hate him. The Twitter wars after this game, the judging an entire career arc off of one game is going to be fascinating. It's going to be peak week 1 content, and I can't wait.
I'm in the camp of loving Caleb Williams, and I think he's a generational quarterback prospect. So I really do think he's going to step in and show out right away. I think he's going to be an MVP candidate this year. We've talked about it on this show. And I think the Bears are a Super Bowl contender. So I think they get the job done. I think they take care of business here, and we're kind of walking out being like, this team's legit. So I like the Bears. Give me the Bears on the spread, and on the bet I'll be making on this game is Bears team total over 24.5. I think they're going to put up some points. They were putting up that amount of points down the stretch last year with a much worse quarterback, and I like Fields, but I think Caleb Williams is going to be a top 10 quarterback pretty much day one.
All right, let's go to another game that honestly doesn't interest me a lot. This is great marketing. It's the New England Patriots at the Cincinnati Bengals. And to me, this should be Joe Burrow versus Drake May, and it isn't. And thus, I just don't find this a very interesting game. I know what Jacoby Brissett is. I also have a pretty good idea of what Drake May is after watching him play really well in the preseason. I can't believe the Patriots aren't starting May. I guess I've got some juice on the Bengals from our shows for some of the awards and for playoff contention. So hopefully Burrow looks good in this game, but New England just doesn't really interest me much this season until they decide to start Drake May.
The Bengals better look good in this game. That's what I'll say. If they don't, then I think there's concerns. And I'm on record. I think the Bengals are going to go below 500 this year. I'm on their under. I don't think they make the playoffs. So I wouldn't be shocked if this is maybe a little closer than the experts think. But if it is, then they've got problems. So give me the Bengals to win, but I won't be watching this game very closely at all.
Yeah, at least it's in the early slate where there's a lot of games. It's not like a Sunday night game. So
yeah, definitely.
All right, let's go to a divisional matchup. The Houston Texans at the Indianapolis Colts. This is CJ Stroud versus Anthony Richardson, the number 2 pick versus the number 4 pick in the same division. Last year, the injury gods robbed us of this matchup. We only saw it for a quarter in week 2 before Anthony Richardson left the game with a concussion. By the way, he rushed for 2 touchdowns before that happened. Gardner Minshew came in and finished the game, and he took the Texans down 31-10, which actually dropped the Texans to 0-2. I forgot they started the year 0-2 last year before they went on their run. Nobody's overlooking the Texans anymore. The Texans are squarely in the middle of the bullseye for every team in the AFC South that's chasing a playoff berth. And the Colts, I think, are very much in that. I want to see how Anthony Richardson looks. I was a huge Richardson guy. He was my QB1 in that draft. I stand by the physical tools. I want to see him play and stay healthy and see that dynamic ability. CJ Stroud was my QB2. I think they were the number 1 and 3 players on my board in that draft. This is going to be fun. I think this has the potential to be like a Peyton Manning, Tom Brady rivalry, but they're in the same division, so they play twice a year. But we got to see Richardson stay healthy. We got to see Stroud sustain what he did last year. This is going to be a really fun game. This is my must-watch game of the afternoon slate.
My matchup to watch is, I mentioned earlier, one of the worst secondaries in the NFL. The Colts are right there. I think they have massive problems. I was listening to a podcast where a Colts fan, actually, Anthony DeBundo, he works for The Ringer. He's a big gambling guy, but he's a Colts fan who lives in Philly. He follows me on Twitter. I'm actually going to have him on the radio show soon, but he was saying how the number one thing people don't realize about the Colts is that they had the luckiest breaks of all time last year. If you go through their schedule in terms of the backup quarterbacks that they got to play throughout the year in a lot of different scenarios, or even if it wasn't a backup, a team with a bad quarterback. So they had a lot of luck in terms of the quarterbacks they played, and maybe their secondary didn't get exposed as much as it needed to for the Colts to feel aggressive enough to go out and replace those guys. But he thinks that it's going to be a real problem this year. So that's why, even though I'm maybe not as in on the Texans taking the leap to Super Bowl contender that other people have them taking, even though I have them winning 11 games, I think the Texans absolutely dominate the Colts defense. So the Colts, here's what I don't know. I think the Texans are going to put up a lot of points. I'm taking the Texans to win the game. I'm taking the Texans team total over. I don't know what to expect at all when it comes to Colts offense versus Texans defense. I think Anthony Richardson is one of the biggest wild cards in the NFL. That's the Jonathan Taylor could run crazy. Anthony Richardson could run crazy. They could run for 300 yards. And maybe this is a different game than I'm expecting. They keep the ball away from Houston. In fact, that would be what I would advise them to do. If I was the Colts, I would try to run the crap out of the ball in this game and try to play ball control offense. But I don't think they're going to keep the ball away enough for CJ Stroud. I think he's going to take away, or he's going to pick apart their secondary. So give me the Texans.
Let me read to you the quarterbacks that they faced from week 7 on.
Yeah.
It was, hold on. There we go. PJ Walker, Mac Jones, Bryce Young, Derek Carr, Gardner Minshew, Will Levis. I said Gardner Minshew. Baker Mayfield, sorry. Gardner Minshew was their quarterback. Will Levis, Jake Browning, Mitchell Trubisky, Taylor Heineke, Aiden O'Connell, and then they ended the year against CJ Stroud.
And they lost that game. Yeah, and that's part of also, I think there's a lot of people like, man, the Colts won 9 games with Minshew last year. Like, if Richardson's just a little bit better than Minshew was, they could be like a Super Bowl contender. They can win like 11 or 12 games. And I know Greg Rosenthal from NFL is big on that. But it's like, yeah, or they got an incredibly favorable schedule and won 9 games. Maybe they were more like a 7-win team. So I think that's something to think about with the Colts. Give me the Texans.
Yeah, I'll take the Texans as well. Let's go to Florida for an interstate, whichever one is the same state. We got Jacksonville taking the long trip to Miami. Give me the Dolphins offense starting hot, as they always do against this Jaguars defense. The question is, can Trevor Lawrence keep pace in this game? How is Brian Thomas Jr. going to look? We know that they were hard up for receiver. They were pigeonholed into taking a receiver in the first round. We talked about that in our offseason divisional preview pods. What wrinkles is Mike McDaniel going to have? Can Press Taylor have play calling duties stripped away mid-game week 1? Because Doug Peterson's like, oh, look at this cool stuff we could do. Fascinating things to watch. What are you thinking about in this game?
This is a brutal one. I lean towards what you think here in terms of Miami just gets started to these incredible starts to the year, and they've got all their guys healthy. McDaniel's got his full weapons at his disposal to draw up the plays he's been thinking about all season. So I lean towards Miami for those reasons. I think Jacksonville's better than Miami. I think they're going to be a better team this year than Miami, but This is kind of similar to Ravens Chiefs, where it's like if this was November, I think I'd like the Jags, even with their collapse last year. But it's September. I think the Dolphins get it done early on in the year. Wouldn't bet this one though with a 10-foot pole.
If it was a cold weather game, unfortunately, there's no season you could play a cold weather game in either Jacksonville or Miami. So the Jaguars should relocate their franchise if they want to take down the Dolphins.
True. Exactly.
I'll take the Dolphins in this one as well. Let's go on to New Orleans, where they play host to the Carolina Panthers in another game that's just not very interesting to me. Can Dave Canales get anything out of Bryce Young? Like, that's this season for the Panthers. For the Saints, I don't find the Saints very interesting. Like, the Saints are exactly what they've been for the Saints are exactly what they've been since the day Drew Brees retired, and nothing will change until they acknowledge that they are no longer the team they were with Drew Brees. That's still not happening. I would find this game more interesting if Spencer Rattler was playing. He's not. I do not care about this game.
I'm in on the Saints in this game. So I'm betting Saints -4. So by proxy, I will have to care about this game. Carolina's not favored in a single game in 2024 as of now, the only team in the NFL. Last year, the Panthers averaged 4.1 yards per play. That was not only the worst in the NFL, but it was the worst for any team since 2008. I just think, even though I like the idea of hiring Dave Canales, I just think this is a total overhaul and a total rebuild, and it's not just going to snap your fingers and get better. So I understand. I know Mike Chiodo, one of my friends on Twitter, a good follow out there for Philly sports fans. He loves Saints under 7.5. He thinks that he says it's like his favorite bet of his lifetime. And we've had those bets with the Saints. I forget what year it was that me and you, was it last year or was it the year before, that me and you were just totally out? I think it was the year before. It was 2022.
It was
right?
2 years. It was after they traded that future first round pick to the Eagles.
Yeah.
And Saints fans were blowing us up, and we were like, they have no receivers.
Yeah, and we were right, and we cashed that under. I think the number was more like 9.5 that year, and now it's 7.5. And Kyoto loves it at 7.5. I think they're like an 8-win team. And if they won 7, it wouldn't surprise me at all. They look like the same team that won 9 last year. I feel like there's a lot of people coming out so hard against the Saints that I feel like maybe it's the contrarian in me. There's part of me like, they're not that bad. Because they're not. They're the same team that they are every year that pushes off the cap to the next year, to the next year, to the next year, so they can field a competitive team. And I think they'll be a competitive team. And if you are a competitive team, I think you take care of the Panthers here and you cover the spread. So give me Saints -4 at home. It's actually one of my favorite bets of the week. And yeah.
They have not won 10 games, but they have not won fewer than 7 games since Drew Brees retired. 9 wins, 7 wins, 9 wins. Like, they're going to be right there again. It just is what it is. They're a terribly unexciting team that's going to go 7 to 8 to 9 wins, maybe be in contention to win a terrible division, convince themselves they're just a couple pieces away, kick all the contracts into the future again, and go win 8 or 9 games again next year too. That's the Saints. We've talked about the Patriots way. This is the Saints way.
Absolutely. I mean, Mickey Loomis just wants to win nine games every year. Joe Ciccoletti, one of our favorite fans here of Chalk Talk, said, give me the under 41 in Saints Panthers. Expect a 17-14 game, divisional game, and both offenses will be slow moving. I don't hate that. I don't hate that. I wonder, Joe Chick, I wonder what the Panthers team total under is. Let me take a look here.
While you look that up, I have a thought. Mickey Loomis looks at Mike Tomlin and he's like, that guy has never had a winning season or a losing season, nor has he won a playoff game in like a decade. Like, Mickey Loomis has a Mike Tomlin poster in his office, and he strives for the Saints to be the Steelers of the NFC with a great defense, no offense, win 9 games a year, and never be a threat in the playoffs. That's the end goal for the Saints. That's what he's striving for.
That is what he's striving. I found the team total under here sitting at 18.5. So you can get Panthers team total under 18.5. I would probably rather bet that than under 41.5, just out of the possibility that the Saints kind of blow them out a little bit. I don't see the Panthers scoring 20 points in this game. So I also the Saints defense better than you think. If you go take a look at it, Saints defense I think is definitely a little bit better than you think at each position group. Chase Young could kind of be an X factor of an addition. And the one thing I will say though, and this kind of goes for everything with betting unders, week one, I have a feeling is going to be a bit of an overfest. Obviously, the new kickoff rules in the preseason, the average starting field position was 9 yards in front of the 25, which obviously last year average field position was the 25. Now it's the 34 with this field goal or with this kickoff. That's going to affect scoring. That's going to push people more down the field. It puts you in field goal range sooner. So I'm a little bit of the opinion that week one might be a time to kind of slam some overs. So I'm looking more at the shootouts than games that I would normally bet the under on. I'm kind of shying away. Like Steelers Falcons is a one that I think I would normally look at the under on. I'm kind of shying away because I'm a little scared that I don't know if Vegas has adjusted to the new kickoff rules. And I do think 9 yards to start your possession, I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, I wonder what it looks like roughly. I would have to crunch numbers on this quite a bit to get a definitive answer, but it looks like roughly the expected points for a possession starting at the 35 rather than the 25, it increases by about a half a point. So that would increase about a half a point of expected scoring per possession. And there's like 15 total possessions in a game. So that's another 7.5 points over 7.5 expected points. We'll see if those are realized, but I may have to crunch the math on that later and try to figure out the exact numbers, but there you go.
Is it a crazy thought that I had there though? And it's not one that I've only really seen it from one place, and I've kind of taken it and kind of ran with it a little bit. I think week one might be a time to slam some overs. Am I wrong, Shane?
It depends. The kickoff logic makes sense, but also you see so many teams not playing starters in the preseason. And I would expect that to impact offenses more than defenses because offenses are so timing based, where defenses are so rules based, and you can learn the rules on a chalkboard more so than the timing. So I could see it going either way. I'm honestly not sure.
I think a game to watch that'll be fun to see how much it affects it is Eagles Packers, to be quite honest. I think that's going to be a game that could swing either way. You could tell me that turns into a 20-17 game. You can tell me that turns into a 42-38 game, to be quite honest. So I think that's one that'll be interesting to see if that gets affected in that one.
Yeah, absolutely. How much, I'm trying to remember now how much Jordan, he played a little bit in the preseason. I don't remember how much he played. I
don't think much.
Okay. He only threw 2 passes.
Yeah.
And one of them was a touchdown. So
there you go.
He's 50% touchdown rate.
He's ready to go
so far. Yeah.
By the way, I'm assuming we're not going to really talk too much about Eagles Packers since we preview it on the other Eagles Pinpool Network. What's your pick on the game to just kind of complete the pick segment here?
I'm taking the Packers.
Me too.
Yeah, I think not to get into it too much here because I'll do it on the other shows, but I think the Fangio defense has a learning curve. I think the defense could struggle just a little bit out of the gate, and I think people will overreact to that, and I think it'll be fine. But you look at Miami last year, how their defense was at the start of the year versus later on. The defense started to really pick up. It was the offense that fell apart, and I think you could expect to see a little bit of that, along with a little bit of rust from the offense. So I think if I had to pick here, I would take the Packers.
Yeah, I would take the Packers too. The one thing I was pretty pessimistic about this game all off season, to be quite honest. And I'm still mad that we have 8 home games while the rest of the NFC has 9, and it happens to be against a team that I think we could be competing to get home field advantage in the playoffs. So this game could be incredibly important, but I don't feel good about it. The one thing that's making me feel a little better as we get closer is just the unknown of the Packers defense. And that could kind of come to bite us as well. Jeff Hafley coming from Boston College. I don't think we know exactly what we can expect in terms of all the looks we'll see from that defense. So that could be a negative where they can kind of throw looks at us we're not expecting. But it could also be one of those things where they're not ready yet with this new defense. And the defense obviously was not very good last year. We're expecting them to improve this year. They've made some additions. Xavier McKinney. They drafted a guy in the first. Who did they draft in the first round? Green Bay.
They drafted.
I think there was
it was an offensive lineman.
Oh, okay. I'm wrong then.
Let me look it up.
They added the linebacker. They added Edgerrin Cooper in the second round.
Jordan Morgan, and then Jordan Morgan, then Edgerrin Cooper.
Yeah, I love Jordan Morgan, by the way. But Edgerrin Cooper, I love both those players. I think Edgerrin Cooper and Xavier McKinney were nice additions. I think they made another addition that I'm forgetting about as well. So the defense is kind of be the most interesting part here of the Packers more than anything. I think Packers defense is the X factor more than anything involving the Eagles, to be quite honest, because I think they're the biggest unknown coming into this game.
Yeah, it drives me crazy that 4 of the Eagles' final 8 games last year were not on Sunday, and they opened the year with a Friday night international game followed by a Monday night game.
I love it. Give me all the night games. And we've talked about this before. I don't want the Eagles at 1:00. It's a nightmare for me.
Yeah, I don't want them at 1:00, but I would prefer for them to play afternoon or Sunday night. Like I get the Thursday, Friday, Monday, man, that's stuff. I hate it. I hate it.
Here's where we differ. I don't like Thursday. Thursday shouldn't exist for anybody. So I'm out on Thursday night football. We're in agreement there. I'm even more out on the Eagles playing at 1, because when there's 10 games going on with my bets, with my fantasy football, with the Eagles, I want to watch every snap of the Eagles. And that's what ends up taking precedence. I feel like I miss so much in terms of gambling, in terms of fantasy. So I really hate the Eagles playing at 1. I hate Thursday nights because I think it can really affect kind of the rhythm of your season. So take those 2 out. That kind of forces me. I think if I had my choice, Sunday night football is probably my favorite. I love kind of when the Eagles play on Sunday night. The whole day builds up to that. I think Sunday at 4 is probably my second. This is a fun little segment. I think Sunday at 4 is my second favorite. And then give me Monday night football. I like Monday night football as well. Friday, this is new. I don't know how to categorize this necessarily, but I'm fine with it for this scenario.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into the afternoon slate. We got 4 games left to cover here. We'll go the Las Vegas Raiders at the Los Angeles Chargers. Talk about new things. New head coach for both teams. Is the I formation going to make an appearance for the Chargers in this game, Mark? Let me scratch that. It's going to make an appearance. Is that we use the term base defense. Is that going to be the base offense for the Chargers now?
I have no idea what to expect from the 1985 Chargers playing in 2024. It's going to be really fun to see, but I don't think it's going to be good for the Chargers. Give me the team that owned the Chargers last year. Give me the Vegas Raiders. I should have looked this up. This is terrible hosting, and I have a stat to throw out while Shane looks it up. What was the game? What was the score of their one game? Obviously, Easton Stick was playing. Jim Harbaugh wasn't the coach. It was an insane blowout, and it was during the run of the end of the Raiders season. Antonio Pierce took over in Week 9 last year, ended up going 7-1-1 against the spread in his 9 games, the best against the spread record of any coach in the NFL during that span. Chargers were 3-6 at home last season. They've been a bad home team for some time. They don't have a home advantage or fans in LA. This is going to be a Raiders home game. The Raiders played in LA for the youngins out there. So, and it's not a far trip from Vegas or Oakland. So I think this is going to be a Raiders home game, and I love the Raiders to win outright. Give me the +3.5. This is one of my favorite bets this is my favorite side. So my favorite bet of the weekend, Jalen Hurts touchdown. My second favorite bet is a total that we're going to get to. And my actual favorite pick on like a side of a team is the Raiders +3.5 here. But what was the score of that game last year?
It was 63-21. Brandon Staley allowed Aiden O'Connell to score 63 points. But he's a defensive genius.
He wasn't impressive. I watched the game. It's not like Aiden O'Connell. You were like, man, he really played well. It was just like, man, this is the worst defense I've ever seen. Like, this is terrible. But I like the Raiders a lot in this one.
All right, let's roll on to Denver at Seattle. Seattle is breaking out the 90s throwback uniforms. I tweeted about that yesterday. Such cool uniforms. I think the Seahawks have my second favorite throwback uniform. My favorite is the Broncos throwback uniform. It's a missed opportunity that they're not wearing these in the same game, although I guess that'd be a lot of color.
I think the Kelly green needs a mention. I think the Kelly green needs a mention. I think it's my number one. My number two is probably Creamsicle Bucks.
Yeah, Creamsicle Bucks is up there. Kelly Green's up there. I
Powder Blue
really like
Chargers.
the Titans throwbacks.
The Oilers.
The Oilers.
Yeah,
Those are cool. Those are probably like some of my favorites for sure.
Powder Blue Chargers, but it almost feels like weird to use because they almost wear it like half the time now, I feel like.
Yeah, I consider the Powder Blue Chargers with the yellow pants is the coolest uniform in current NFL sports. I wouldn't really consider it a throwback. It's almost their base uniform now, though.
That's fair. Totally fair.
Yeah, so Bo Nix is going to make his debut in Seattle. That is a tough place to start a career, especially with Mike McDonald in charge of the Seahawks defense now. I expect this to be a long day for the Broncos. And Bo Nix looked good in the preseason. Regular season's different. I think the Seahawks take care of business and get the pretty impressive looking win here.
I have nothing to say here. Seahawks win. I think they win handily. I won't bet it. They're better. But I guess the only thing I'll say is I do feel like Seahawks -6 is a little bit of a trap. I feel like they win by 5 just to screw everybody because everybody loves Seattle. Everybody's it kind of all offseason, no one talked about Seattle. And I feel like the last week or two, people doing their playoff predictions. I know on Good Morning Football, Peter Schrager just picked them to make the playoffs. Everyone's picking Seattle to make the playoffs all of a sudden. And everyone's picking them to kind of be their surprise team. So I don't know. That's all I'll say. I don't see it. I think they'll be fine. I think they'll kind of be the same as last year.
All right, on to Sunday Night Football, the Matthew Stafford Bowl Part 3. The Los Angeles Rams travel to Detroit to take on the Lions. The first time these teams met after Stafford switched teams was a regular season game in 2021 where Stafford took down his former team. Part 2 was in the playoffs last season when the Lions ended the Rams season at Ford Field. 24-23. This is the second consecutive game for the Rams playing in Detroit. Literally the last time they played football, they walked off this same field with a 1-point loss. How's it going to go this year? There is so much interesting in this game with the Rams. We talk about their weapons, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, Matthew Stafford. The sky and health is the limit for that offense. How's the defense going to look without Aaron Donald? Are the Lions going to be able to pick up where they left off? I mean, Dan Campbell told his guys last year that we might never get here again, and that's certainly true. It is hard to get back. This is going to be a great game. It was a great choice for Sunday Night Football. Where do you lean in this one?
I love the over. Give me the over. I'll just be rooting for points. 50.5. I've been vocal. I think the Rams defense is going to be the worst in football this year. I think people are really underrating the loss of Aaron Donald. Peter Schrager and Kyle Brandt, both on Good Morning Football, picked the Rams to be the number 2 seed and win the NFC West. Everyone's all over the Rams as kind of their sleeper team, not only to win the division, but to compete for the Super Bowl. And I don't think people have looked at the defensive depth chart because one of the craziest things, no one talked about it. The Rams just deciding they were going to release Ernest Jones or trade him for a 6th round pick when he played I think he graded out as a top 10 linebacker on PFF last year. And the new defensive coordinator just decided he doesn't fit their scheme and they don't want to pay him. So they thought, let's just get rid of him now. What does that do for your team? I don't understand the logic of we weren't going to pay him. He was going to start apparently, but they said, we weren't going to pay him. So why don't we get rid of him now? Or you could do what everyone does and just play him and not pay him at the end of the year and then let him walk.
Get a comp pick.
Yeah, I don't understand the logic at all of trading him for a 5th or 6th round pick days before the season. I know he was kind of banged up in training camp, so he missed a lot of time in training camp. He graded out really well last year. He's a young player. I like Tennessee taking the chance on him for nothing. I think that's a smart move by Tennessee. I wish the Eagles would have looked at it. But I just think it's a weird choice to make on a defense that's going to really struggle after Aaron Donald leaves to kind of get rid of a guy that can play and did play well last year in the same similar system. So I don't get it. And I think they've made a lot of weird choices on defense this whole offseason. Give me the over. Also, Detroit, everyone points to the secondary. They went out and they drafted Terry and Arnold. They drafted Ennis Rakestraw. I think they brought in someone else in the secondary as well. Brian Branch, another year older, expected to kind of take a leave. I think everyone's just looking at that and saying, oh, wow, all the issues with their pass defense are fixed from last year. Here's the thing. They had one pass rusher last year, and that was a big problem. They had no one else outside of Aiden Hutchinson that could really get after the quarterback, and they didn't really fix that. They didn't go out and really add anybody that can go out get after the quarterback. So that's where I'm at a little bit with the Lions defense. I think it's maybe not going to be quite as good as people think, even though the secondary might be better. So I give me the over here. I love it. I lean towards the Lions winning the game.
Yeah, same. I lean towards the Lions. The offense for the Rams could be really fun, like you talked about. But, I mean, to go back to the Eagles, that late season collapse last year, the Eagles still ranked as a top 10 offense during that stretch. And they ranked 30th or 31st, depending on the category, as a defense. I think there's every possibility the Rams defense is that bad. And it's just hard to overcome a defense that's that bad. And maybe that looks like a ridiculous take a month into the season and they're playing well. I don't know. There's so many young players. Aaron Donald is gone. Like, we'll see, but I just have a feeling it could be a really bad unit.
Clip this again when they're 6-2 again this year, and me and Shane look dumb again for doubting McVay and the Rams. But
I'm not doubting McVay. I'm doubting the defense.
Yeah, same thing here. I think the offense will be good. So we came into last year saying they could be one of the worst teams in football. I'm not saying that, but I think they are going to win 6 or 7 games because I think that defense is truly terrible. I agree with what the analogy you made to the late season Eagles.
All right, let's get to the final game of the slate. Monday Night Football, New York Jets at San Francisco 49ers. Jets fans might have a little bit of PTSD after they started the year on Monday Night Football last year and lost Aaron Rodgers like 3 plays into the game. Terrible way to start the year. Hopefully, they have much better injury luck on this Monday Night Football. But the storyline in this game for me, besides how Aaron Rodgers looks, is Trent Williams going to play? He has apparently reported to the 49ers facility as of today. So he's not currently on the 49ers 53-man roster. He was listed as a did not report. Is he going to be up to speed and play on Monday night? I have no idea. But the 49ers offensive line has been a weakness for years with Trent Williams, one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL. Without him, it would be in a truly scary place. Jalen Moore was a 5th-round pick in 2021. He would be the left tackle if Trent Williams doesn't play. He's only got 555 career snaps in 3 seasons. Aaron Banks is a bad player who's coming off of pinky surgery, and his status is up in the air. Dominique Puni was a 3rd-round rookie. Colton McKivitz is coming off a poor year. Like, this offensive line could be atrocious, especially if Williams doesn't play. The Jets are fortunate they're catching the 49ers early, though. Since 2021, I saw this stat on Twitter today, and unfortunately, I can't remember the name that I got it from, but San Francisco is only 12-12 through the first 8 games of the season since 2021. They're 23-4 in games 9 through 17 in that same time frame. So if you're going to catch 49ers, you want to do it early. Especially you want to do it while Brandon Ayuk is maybe getting back up to speed, while Trent Williams might not play. I like the Jets in this one, but I do have a little bit of trepidation about how Aaron Rodgers is going to look.
I've got some fun stats here, but since 2000, the loser of the Super Bowl has had a tough time in week 1. Super Bowl losers 10-14 straight up in week 1, 5-19 against the spread. When they're favored by over a field goal, like the Jets are in this game, they are 4-9 against the spread. In 2020, kind of a similar, the 49ers made the Super Bowl under this regime. In 2020, they lost at home against the Cardinals as a 6.5-point favorite. I think that would have been really young Kyler, maybe even rookie. Was that rookie Kyler or second? I think that would have been second-year Kyler, now that I'm thinking about it. I think he was 2019 draft. But then on the other side, Aaron Rodgers, 13-6 straight up, 11-8 against the spread in his career on Monday Night Football. And he's won 10 straight Monday Night Football games. Last loss was back in 2013. Underdogs in week 1 on Monday Night Football, 29-12-1 against the spread since 1998. So I love the Jets, Jets. I agree with you. I think they got the 49ers at the exact right time. Trent Williams reporting back, Brandon Ayuk reporting back. Ricky Pearsall was just shot in San Francisco. That was insane news. Hopefully he's okay. I think they said that he is okay.
Yeah.
But I imagine did they say how much time he's going to miss, or I have no idea. I imagine it's a lot or a while. He was shot, I think, in like the arm or chest area kind of over there. I saw the one picture.
Yeah, he was placed on the NFI list, so he's out at least 4 games, but I haven't heard anything other than that. Yeah, he's released from the hospital. The gunshot wound was to the chest.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the timeline is on that, but being on the NFI list, he'll at least miss the first 4 games.
Yeah, I just think that the Niners have a whole lot of distractions going on, for lack of a better term, and a whole bunch of different distractions going on for them. And going into this game, I think the Jets are just, you got so much hype. You played last year with Zach Wilson at quarterback. I can't imagine how excited that defense is to have an actual quarterback on the other side, and hopefully he lasts longer than 5 plays.
Yeah.
But hey, they won week 1 last year without him. So if he gets hurt, they'll bring in Tyrod, and it'll be fine.
Yeah, that'd be better than what they brought in last year for sure.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this week 1 preview. Again, won't normally be a preview show, but we were excited. We can't wait. We will be back normally on Mondays to recap, especially the Eagles divisional opponents, but look at some of the other big games in the NFL. So you guys smash that subscribe button. A lot of shows coming your way really quickly this week with the game on Friday. This afternoon, you'll get On the Shane page. Johnny and I are having Brandon Lee Gouton on for a season preview. Tomorrow, Wednesday, you'll get Birds of the Roundtable in the podcast feed. On Thursday, you're going to get the Armchair Scouts in the feed. And then Thursday night or Friday morning, you'll get Eye on the Enemy with John Stolness. And of course, we'll be live after the game for a post-game show that'll be in the audio feed later on. So a lot of content coming your way in a really short time frame. Make sure you guys are subscribed. Mark, before we get out of here, do you have any final thoughts for the people?
Everyone check out Armchair Scouts, where Shane, Ryan, Dibes, and I pick our Eagles target of the week and our fantasy football pick of the week, who we think is going to put up big stats. Go back and listen to last week where I predicted Georgia absolutely demolishing Clemson. I think I said 49-3. They won, I think it was 37-3, something like that, in that range. Don't listen to the part where I said Virginia Tech was going to put up all these numbers on Vanderbilt, because then they lost outright. But go listen to the Georgia part where I sounded smart, and go listen this week where we'll, of course, I'll get all my predictions right.
And don't listen to the week 0 preview where Mark picked DJU as his player of the week prediction. Definitely don't listen to that
We had no choices. Also, don't look at last week where I picked Kyron Drones, who was not very good either. I'm not very good at the fantasy football segment. But Xavier Watts. But I can't believe I went this whole podcast without mentioning Notre Dame having their biggest win in like 5 years. But Xavier Watts, the guy I covered on that show, big interception, one of the biggest plays in that game. So I felt justified in that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Go check that show out. It's a lot of fun. It's a short show, shortest show in the feed, about 30 minutes, just to get you guys prepped for the college football weekend. So be sure you check that out. Thank you guys all for joining us for this episode 168 of Chalk Talk. If you enjoy the show, and we know that you do, smash that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode, and drop us a 5-star rating and review. We would really appreciate that. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Shane Half NFL. He is at Mark Henry Jr., and we will catch you guys next time.